To understand what American Pharoah accomplished, we need to go back to 1978. That's when Affirmed, ridden by the legendary Steve Cawthon, won the Triple Crown, the Kentucky Derby, Preakness Stakes, and Belmont Stakes. It was the third Triple Crown in 6 years. Seattle Slew had done it in 1977 and Secretariat in 1973. Back then, winning the Triple Crown seemed difficult but achievable. After all, 3 horses had done it in a span of just 5 years. Nobody imagined what would come next. 37 years, 13 horses would win the first 2 legs, the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness, only to fail at Belmont. Some would finish second, agonizingly close. Others would fade to the middle or back of the pack, crushed by the enormous pressure and the grueling mile-and-a-half distance. American Pharoah's story doesn't begin with destiny written in the stars. It begins with controversy, doubt, and a spelling error that would make English teachers everywhere cringe. He was born on February 2, 2012, at Everett Farms in Paris, Kentucky. His parents were a pioneer of the Nile, who had finished second in the 2009 Kentucky Derby, and little Princess Emma, a mare who had never won a stakes race. Good bloodlines, certainly, but nothing that screamed greatness. And then there was the name. When owner Ahmed Zayat submitted the name American Pharoah to the Jockey Club, he misspelled Pharaoh, leaving out the second A. By the time anyone noticed, it was too late. The name was official. Zayat would later joke about the error, but he never tried to change it. That misspelling would become one of the most famous in sports history. The Zayat family had a complicated history in horse racing. Ahmed Zayat had made his fortune in Egypt and came to American racing with big dreams and deep pockets. His Zayat stables had some success, but also faced significant financial difficulties, including a bankruptcy filing in 2010. By the time American Pharoah was born, the family was rebuilding. As a yearling, American Pharoah didn't particularly stand out. Bob Baffert, who would become his trainer, remembered first seeing him and thinking he was a nice horse, but not necessarily special. But something began to change as American Pharoah started training. There was a presence about him, an intelligence, a competitiveness that went beyond mere talent. Assistant trainer Jimmy Barnes would later say that American Pharoah knew he was special from a young age. The horse's early workouts showed promise. He was fast, yes, but more importantly, he was smart. He learned quickly, he didn't panic. These qualities would prove crucial later. American Pharoah's 2-year-old season in 2014 showed flashes of brilliance. He won the Del Mar Futurity and the Frontrunner Stakes, displaying a powerful closing kick that left observers impressed. But he also showed vulnerability, finishing second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile after a troubled trip. Still, Bob Baffert, the legendary trainer who had already won 4 Kentucky Derbies, saw something in American Pharoah, something that reminded him of past champions. When asked if this colt could be special, Baffert, usually cautious with predictions, allowed himself to hope. As 2015 approached, American Pharoah was considered a legitimate Kentucky Derby contender. But so were a dozen other horses. Nobody was talking about the Triple Crown. That conversation was too dangerous, too fraught with 37 years of disappointment. First, he had to win the Derby, and that was anything but guaranteed. May 2nd, 2015. Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. The Kentucky Derby is called the most exciting 2 minutes in sports, and it's not hyperbole. It's chaos wrapped in tradition, drenched in bourbon, and set to the tune of My Old Kentucky Home. It's where dreams begin and where most dreams end. The 141st running of the Derby had a strong field of 18 horses. American Pharoah was the favorite at 5-2 odds, but far from a sure thing. Dortmund, also trained by Bob Baffert, was right behind him in the betting. Carpe Diem, Materiality, and others all had legitimate chances. Bob Baffert faced an unusual situation. He had the two favorites in the same race. Some trainers might root equally for both horses, but Baffert later admitted that American Pharoah had become his focus. There was just something about this horse. Victor Espinoza would be riding American Pharoah. Espinoza was a veteran jockey from Mexico who had already won the Derby twice before, with War Emblem in 2002 and California Chrome in 2014. He knew what it took to win. He also knew the pain of Triple Crown failure, having come up short with California Chrome at Belmont the previous year. The partnership between Espinoza and American Pharoah would become legendary, but it started with respect and strategy. Espinoza recognized the horse's intelligence and running style. American Pharoah was a closer. He liked to sit mid-pack and then unleash a devastating kick in the stretch. That's a dangerous strategy in the Derby, where traffic problems can derail any race. The gates opened and 18 thoroughbreds exploded onto the track. Dortmund, the other Baffert horse, seized the lead early. This was perfect for American Pharoah's strategy. Espinoza settled him into a comfortable position around 10th place, saving energy, staying out of trouble. The field thundered down the backstretch. The pace was fast, but not suicidal. American Pharoah moved smoothly, his stride effortless. Espinoza felt the power beneath him, the coiled energy waiting to be released. Around the far turn, Espinoza made his move. American Pharoah began picking off horses one by one. By the top of the stretch, he was in third, then second, rapidly closing on his stablemate Dortmund. And then came the moment. With about an eighth of a mile remaining, American Pharoah shifted into another gear. It wasn't just speed, it was dominance. He blew past Dortmund as if his stablemate was standing still. The crowd erupted, and in seconds, American Pharoah had opened up daylight. Then more daylight, then a commanding lead. He crossed the finish line one length ahead of firing line, with Dortmund fading to third. The winning time was 2:03:02. Fast, but not record-breaking. What impressed observers wasn't just the speed, but the way American Pharoah had won, with power, with authority, with something that looked like greatness. In the winner's circle, Ahmed Zayed hugged his family. Bob Baffert allowed himself a smile. Victor Espinoza, ever humble, patted American Pharoah's neck. But nobody said the words, not yet. It was too soon to talk about the Triple Crown. One down and two to go. 2 weeks later, on May 16th, American Pharoah arrived at Pimlico Racecourse in Baltimore, Maryland, for the 140th Preakness Stakes. The Preakness is called the middle jewel of the Triple Crown, and it's the race where many Derby winners falter. It comes just 2 weeks after the Derby, barely enough time for a horse to recover and prepare. The distance is slightly shorter at 1 1/16 miles, and the Pimlico track has a reputation for being quirky with tight turns that can catch horses off guard. The field was smaller, only 8 horses, but it included several dangerous competitors, including Tale of Verve, who was fresh and hadn't run in the Derby, and Dortmund, looking for revenge against his stablemate. The crowd of over 131,000 people packed Pimlico, creating an atmosphere that felt somewhere between a sporting event and a street festival. The Black-Eyed Susan cocktails were flowing, the Maryland State song echoed through the infield. But underneath the party atmosphere was tension. Could American Pharoah do it again? Victor Espinoza knew the challenge. Running the same race twice, just 2 weeks apart, at this level of intensity with massive expectations, it was asking almost the impossible from a 3-year-old horse. American Pharoah would need to prove that the Derby wasn't a fluke, that he truly was special. The race began, and immediately something looked different. Mr. Z and Bodhisattva broke sharply and battled for the early lead, setting a blistering pace. Tale of Verve and Dortmund stalked just behind them. But Espinoza knew what he was doing. He was letting the speed horses burn themselves out, conserving American Pharoah's energy for when it mattered most. Around the clubhouse turn, American Pharoah began to advance. Not rushing, just gradually moving up. By the backstretch, he was in the middle of the pack. The pace up front was taking its toll on the leaders. Mr. Z and Bodhisattva were shortening stride. Then came the far turn, and Espinoza asked American Pharoah for his run. The response was immediate and electric. American Pharoah swept to the outside, passing horses in groups of 2 and 3. His acceleration was breathtaking. Within a few strides, he had gone from 5th to 2nd, then to 1st, and then, incredibly, he began to pull away. Down the stretch, it wasn't a race anymore. It was a coronation. American Pharoah opened up 3 lengths, then 4, then 5, then 6. He crossed the finish line 7 lengths ahead of Tale of Verve, who finished a distant second. The time was 1:58.46, the 6th fastest Preakness in history. The 3 weeks between the Preakness and Belmont Stakes felt like 3 years. American Pharoah mania swept across the country. The horse appeared on magazine covers. ESPN dedicated extensive coverage to his training sessions. Casual sports fans who had never watched a horse race suddenly knew American Pharoah's name. The media circus at Belmont Park became overwhelming. Bob Baffert tried to keep things normal, but nothing was normal. Security around American Pharoah's barn increased. Every workout became a news event, analyzed frame by frame by experts and amateurs alike. When American Pharoah had a strong workout, it was seen as a good omen. When he had a merely okay workout, people worried. The pressure on everyone involved was immense. Ahmed Zayat, who had invested his family's fortune into horse racing and faced bankruptcy, saw the Triple Crown as validation of everything he'd worked for. Victor Espinoza, who had come so close with California Chrome the year before, faced questions about whether he could finish the job this time. And Bob Baffert, despite his 4 Kentucky Derby wins, had never trained a Triple Crown winner. He'd come close with Silver Charm in 1997 and Real Quiet in 1998, but both had failed at Belmont. For Baffert, those failures haunted him. He remembered how close Real Quiet had come, a nose away from immortality. He remembered the heartbreak of watching the replay over and over, wondering what he could have done differently. But he also noticed something different about American Pharoah. The horse seemed unbothered by the chaos. While photographers clicked and reporters shouted questions and crowds pressed against the barriers, American Pharoah remained calm, almost serene, as if he understood what was expected of him and accepted the challenge. "He's got the eye of the tiger," Baffert said in an interview. "Nothing rattles him." The field for the Belmont Stakes would be small, only 8 horses. Several owners scratched their horses, believing they had no chance against American Pharoah. Others entered, hoping to be the spoiler, the horse that would deny history. The most dangerous threat appeared to be Frosted, a strong horse who had skipped the Preakness to stay fresh. Frosted's connections were confident. They believed the 1.5-mile distance of Belmont, the longest of the 3 Triple Crown races, would expose American Pharoah. After all, 13 other horses had wilted under that distance and pressure. Sports psychologists began weighing in on the mental challenge facing American Pharoah. 3 brutal races in 5 weeks, with the last being the longest and most demanding. Could any 3-year-old horse handle that? Some veterinarians expressed concerns, noting that modern thoroughbreds were bred more for speed than stamina, making the Belmont's distance especially challenging. The week before the race, news outlets ran retrospectives on past Triple Crown attempts. They showed footage of Real Quiet's devastating near miss, of Charismatic breaking down during the race, of I'll Have Another being scratched at the last moment due to injury. The message was clear. Disaster could strike at any moment. Ahmed Zayat tried to remain confident publicly, but admitted to sleepless nights. What if the American Pharoah got injured? What if he simply didn't have enough left in the tank? What if the curse was real? Bob Baffert made a crucial decision. He would keep American Pharoah's training routine as normal as possible. No last-minute changes and no desperate strategies. They would trust the horse, trust the preparation, and let the chips fall where they may. The night before the race, Baffert visited American Pharoah in his stall. The horse looked him in the eye, calm and ready. Baffert walked away believing, not hoping, believing. June 6, 2015 dawned sunny and perfect. By mid-morning, people were already lining up outside Belmont Park. By early afternoon, the crowd had swelled beyond 90,000. It was the largest attendance at Belmont in history, surpassing even Secretariat's Triple Crown run. The energy was different than a typical race day. There was anxiety mixed with hope, exhaustion from 37 years of disappointment mixed with desperate optimism. Some fans wore American Pharoah t-shirts. Others held signs, "Make history" and "End the curse" and simply "Believe." As post-time approached, the tension became almost unbearable. 5:51 p.m. Eastern Time. The horses loaded into the starting gate for the 147th Belmont Stakes. American Pharoah stood calmly in post position 5. Victor Espinoza whispered something to him, though nobody knows what. To the horse's right, Frosted pawed anxiously at the ground. To his left, Mubtahi waited patiently. But this race was never about the other 7 horses. This race was about one question. Could American Pharoah do what 13 others could not? The bell rang, the gates crashed open, and they were off. American Pharoah broke cleanly and got first position right out of the gates. Espinoza kept him relaxed, conserving energy. The opening quarter mile went in 24 seconds, a reasonable pace. Down the backstretch, American Pharoah moved smoothly. His stride was rhythmic, powerful, efficient. Espinoza barely had to guide him. The horse knew where he needed to be, what he needed to do. Through the half mile, American Pharoah remained in first. The pace stayed honest but not suicidal. Frosted began moving up on the outside, clearly planning to make a challenge. Around them, 90,000 people screamed themselves hoarse. Then came the far turn, the moment of truth. Espinoza moved American Pharoah to the inside, giving him racing room. He asked the horse for his run, and American Pharoah responded like a champion. The crowd noise reached a deafening crescendo. This was it. This was the moment where past Triple Crown attempts had crumbled. This was where the curse lived. But American Pharoah didn't crumble. He accelerated. Frosted tried desperately to match him, but couldn't. American Pharoah pulled away by a length, then a length and a half, and then 2 lengths. With a quarter mile remaining, the race was effectively over. But nobody in the stadium could breathe. They needed to see him cross the finish line. They needed to see it become real. American Pharoah charged down the stretch, his lead growing with every stride. 2.5 lengths, 3 lengths, 3.5. NBC announcer Larry Kalmus made the call that would echo through history. American Pharoah is alone! American Pharoah has won the Triple Crown! The horse crossed the finish line 5.5 lengths ahead of Frosted. The time was 2:26.65. Not a record, but it didn't matter. American Pharoah had done it. He had won the Triple Crown. He had ended the 37-year curse. The crowd erupted in a way that Belmont Park had never experienced. People were crying, hugging strangers, screaming themselves hoarse. In the press box, hardened journalists wiped away tears. In living rooms across America, millions jumped off their couches in celebration. Victor Espinoza stood up in his stirrups, pumping his fist. Bob Baffert, normally stoic, broke down in tears. Ahmed Zayed and his family embraced in the winner's circle, overcome with emotion. But perhaps the most remarkable image was American Pharoah himself. After crossing the finish line, after achieving what no horse had done in 37 years, he didn't seem tired or distressed. He seemed almost satisfied, like he'd completed what he was born to do. The victory ceremony was unlike anything in recent sports memory. NBC kept its cameras on American Pharoah long after most races would have moved on. Reporters scrambled to capture every angle, every moment. Social media exploded with tributes and celebrations. President Barack Obama tweeted his congratulations. Athletes from other sports weighed in. Even people who had never watched horse racing before felt connected to this achievement. In the days that followed, American Pharoah appeared on magazine covers worldwide. Sports Illustrated featured him prominently. The New York Times ran a front-page story. ESPN's SportsCenter opened with his victory. He became more than a racehorse. He became a cultural phenomenon. But the story didn't end at Belmont. After the Triple Crown, American Pharoah could have retired immediately and secured his place in history. But Bob Baffert and the Zayed family made a different choice. They decided to race him a few more times, giving fans additional opportunities to see greatness in action. In July 2015, American Pharoah won the Haskell Invitational at Monmouth Park, his first race since the Triple Crown. He did it easily, winning by 2.25 lengths and extending his winning streak. But his crowning achievement literally came on October 31, 2015, in the Breeders' Cup Classic at Keeneland. The Classic is often called the year-end championship of horse racing, featuring the best horses from around the world. It's also run at 1.25 miles against older, more experienced horses. American Pharoah faced his toughest competition yet. The field included older champions and international stars. Many wondered if the 3-year-old had anything left after such a grueling season. The answer came in the Keeneland stretch. American Pharoah, carrying Victor Espinoza, unleashed one final devastating kick, pulling away from the field to win by 6.5 lengths. It was dominating, it was definitive, and it was the perfect ending to a perfect season. With that victory, American Pharoah became the first horse ever to win the Triple Crown and the Breeders' Cup Classic in the same year, a feat now called the Grand Slam of horse racing. He was unanimously named the 2015 Horse of the Year and Champion 3-year-old male. American Pharoah retired after the Breeders' Cup Classic with a record of 9 wins in 11 starts and earnings of over $8 million. More importantly, he had captured the imagination of a nation and revitalized interest in horse racing. He entered stud duty at Ashford Stud in Kentucky, where his breeding fee was initially set at $200,000 per mare. His offspring began hitting the racetrack in 2019, with several showing promise, though none have yet matched their father's achievements. But American Pharoah's impact goes far beyond statistics and offspring.
He reminded people why they love sports, for those rare, transcendent moments when an athlete accomplishes something that seems impossible. For 37 years, the Triple Crown had become horse racing's version of the 4-minute mile or landing on the moon. Theoretically possible, but practically out of reach. American Pharoah made it possible again.
Interestingly, his Triple Crown victory seemed to break the curse entirely. Just 3 years later, in 2018, another horse named Justify won the Triple Crown, trained by Bob Baffert and ridden by Mike Smith. Suddenly, the impossible had happened twice in 4 years, after 37 years of failure. Sports psychologists and racing analysts have debated why. Some credit improved training methods, and others point to changes in racing schedules. But many believe that American Pharoah's victory simply removed the mental barrier. He showed that it could be done, and others followed. The people involved in American Pharoah's journey went on to their own successes. Bob Baffert solidified his place as one of the greatest trainers in history. Victor Espinoza continued his Hall of Fame career. Ahmed Zayat was named Owner of the Year and saw his investment in horse racing vindicated in the most spectacular way possible. But perhaps the most touching legacy involves the fans. After American Pharoah's Triple Crown victory, attendance at horse races increased significantly. A new generation of fans discovered the sport. Young girls and boys asked for toy horses for their birthdays. Racing had its moment in the sun again, and it was all because of a bay colt with a misspelled name and an indomitable spirit. American Pharoah's story is more than sports history. It's a reminder that greatness is still possible in an age of cynicism, that belief can be rewarded, and that curses are made to be broken. For 37 years, horse racing fans waited for another champion. They endured disappointment after disappointment, near miss after near miss. Some gave up hope. Others kept believing, kept showing up, kept hoping that maybe, just maybe, this would be the year. On June 6, 2015, that hope was rewarded. American Pharoah thundered down the Belmont stretch and into history, proving that sometimes the impossible is just the possible waiting for the right moment. If you enjoyed this deep dive into American Pharoah's incredible journey, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more stories about the greatest moments in horse racing history. Drop a comment below telling us your favorite American Pharoah moment, or what legendary sports story you'd like us to cover next. Thanks for watching, and remember, never stop believing in greatness.